Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 study. We're on the first class. We're going to start at the beginning of Canto 2. And we're picking up where we left off, having read the first canto, a series of important questions from Maharaj Parikshit, which we'll review. And Shukadeva Goswami is going to speak. And first, we'll hear the transcendental sound vibration and chant Hare Krishna.
Okay, welcome, sweet souls. Grateful to be back with you all after a week. For those listening later, we're sending this vibration to you now. Let's take a deep breath in, fill up. Exhale, let it go. Sip the breath in for opening prayers. Om Jnana Samantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasare Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Bhag and beyond key. Shastra Study Group key. Gaura Premanande. Hari 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 Bol.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashrakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. All right. So, who would like to give us some points, some thoughts, anything on where we are? We're starting the second canto. What's just happened? What is the context?
We're about to get some answers on what do you do when you know you're about to die?
Mm.
And all the sages are gathered and ready to listen.
Why would Parikshit ask that? Anybody? Why would you want to know about that?
Because he's gonna die soon.
Snakebird.
Snakebird. Why do we know he's going to die soon?
He was cursed by the son of a great sage who he ignored him when Parikshit when he was I guess talking to him, and so the son saw that he was being rude and he cursed him to die in 10 days, 12 days,
7 days.
7 days, 7 days
Yeah.
by the snakebird bite.
That's right. Yeah, there was a sage in the forest by the name of Shamika, and he lived in a little hermitage, and he was deep in meditation, and by the will of the Lord, Maharaj Parikshit became unusually so, hungry and thirsty. As he was speaking to the sage didn't notice because he was in his meditation, his trance, and so Maharaj Parikshit garlanded him with the dead snake that was there. This is in the middle of the forest. Then he felt bad about it. Like, why did I do such a childish thing? And speaking of childish, Shamika's son, Shringi, a Brahmana who had some power because of his position, he cursed Maharaj Parikshit, and Parikshit said, well, okay, I accept it. And instead of fighting it, he decided, well, this is a great opportunity Krishna sent me to actually just purify myself of my attachments, and I can actually seek out the highest purpose here. So he sat down to fast till death on the bank of the Ganges, and Shukadeva Goswami has entered into the assembly, and even his own father, Vyasadeva, is there honoring him, and Narada Muni is there, and other great devotees and great spiritualists and transcendentalists, and so he's entered the scene, and Maharaj Parikshit has greeted him, and that's the backstory. That's where we are. Pretty amazing. Okay. Any comments, questions, reflections on that before we jump in? All of you were with us in the Canto 1 study, so you may have anything to share. You can. We've explored a lot together. Nancy, you need to unmute.
Everybody's realizations were really great. I said, of course, I have one thing to say, but everybody's realizations were really great. But I kept on thinking of how fortunate we are that these questions are being asked. It's a little like the questions that Arjuna asks Krishna of, show me your universal form. For those of us who may still not believe that Krishna is the supreme truth, those questions are like, oh, wow, okay, now I really believe. And here now we have the sages, asking questions that, if I was sitting there, maybe I'd be thinking of. And so they're going to help me and help us to really come closer and deeper to Krishna and the absolute truth. And it's a beautiful thing. So thank you.
Yeah, there's a nice small book by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, one of Srila Prabhupada's conversations. It's based on a conversation, I believe. It's called Perfect Questions. Yeah, it is. It's based on a conversation with a future disciple, Brahma Tirtha Prabhu, maybe. And it's called Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. And at that point, there you go. Yeah, at that point, Brahma Tirtha Prabhu was a very inquisitive, an innocent young man who met Srila Prabhupada may have been in India actually, and he asked him, he wanted to know what the deal was with everything. And so their conversation was recorded with Shyamasundar Prabhu. Brahmatirtha Prabhu, I've met him. He's a very intellectual person. He serves in the Bhaktivedanta, what is it called? The science branch? No.
Bhaktivedanta Institute.
That's right, the BI, Bhaktivedanta Institute, where they do a lot of kind of crossover research using empirical methods, showing how Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga, the teachings of Bhagavatam make sense from the scientific perspective. So quite intellectual. And he asked very intelligent questions of Srila Prabhupada. They were recorded by Shyamasundar Prabhu, who then it was compiled into a book. And that's the secret. You can't get the right answers if you don't ask the right questions. In fact, that very topic is going to come up in the first few verses, where Shukadeva basically praises his disciple. Functionally, Parikshit is acting like a disciple, like you actually asked the best questions. And we're going to get to that, but probably in the next few minutes. Thank you. Any other reflections or questions or anything about where we're at that you wanted to touch on? Okay. Chai. Well, if you open up the second canto or you turn to the Veda base, you'll see that it actually begins with an invocation, which is the invocation that we invoke. Invocation means to call in. We invoke this before Bhagavatam always. So we'll read it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So that's the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Translation: O my Lord, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So from the purport, Prabhupada writes, Vasudevaya means to Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Simply by chanting the name of Krishna, Vasudeva, so Vasudeva means the son of Vasudeva. By chanting his name, one can achieve all the good results of charity, austerity, and penances. It is to be understood that by the chanting of this mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, the author or the speaker or any one of the readers of Srimad Bhagavatam is offering respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasures. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the principles of creation are described, and thus the first canto may be called creation. So as we're going to hear later on in this canto, the Bhagavatam is basically divided into 10 topics. Or is it 12? Anyway, because there's, Prabhupada talks about here. Similarly, in the second canto, the post-creation cosmic manifestation is described. The different planetary systems are described in the second canto as different parts of the universal body of the Lord. For this reason, the second canto may be called the cosmic manifestation. There are 10 chapters in the second canto, and in these 10 chapters, the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam and the different symptoms of this purpose are narrated. The first chapter describes the glories of chanting, and it hints at the process by which the neophyte devotee may perform meditation on the universal form of the Lord. In the first verse, Shukadeva Goswami replies to the questions of Maharaj Parikshit, who asked him about one's duties at the point of death. Maharaj Parikshit was glad to receive Shukadeva Goswami, and he was proud of being a descendant of Arjuna, the intimate friend of Krishna. Personally, he was very humble and meek, but he expressed his gladness that Lord Krishna was very kind to his grandfathers, the sons of Pandu. Because Lord Krishna was always pleased with Maharaj Parikshit's family, at the verge of Maharaj Parikshit's death, Shukadeva Goswami was sent to help him in the process of self-realization. Maharaj Parikshit was a devotee of Lord Krishna from his childhood, so he had natural affection for Krishna. Remember that he got this name Parikshit, which means the examiner, because in the womb, when he was still just an unborn child in the womb, he saw Krishna because Krishna came and saved him from the weapon of Ashvatthama, and that impression was there in his heart. And he was always looking for that. Shukadeva Goswami could understand his devotion. Therefore, he welcomed the questions about the king's duty. Because the king hinted that worship of Lord Krishna is the ultimate function of every living entity. Shukadeva Goswami welcomed the suggestion and said, because you raised questions about Krishna, your question is most glorious. The translation of the first verse is as follows. So, we're going to hear Shukadeva's questions. So just exactly what Maharaj Parikshit asked, he said in 11924 and 11938, what is the ultimate duty of every person, especially one who is about to die? And what should one hear, chant, and remember? And what should one not do? So, effectively, in the first 5 verses, Shukadeva Goswami answers that. Verse 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, my dear king, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. It's a glorious question, he says. Purport. Even the very question is so nice that it is the best subject matter for hearing. Right? As Nancy was saying, just the question itself is such a blessing. Just to hear the right question is already the beginning of all auspiciousness. Simply by such questioning and hearing, one can achieve the highest perfectional stage of life. Because questions and answers about Krishna elevate one to that transcendental position, the questions of Maharaj Parikshit about Krishna philosophy are greatly glorified. Maharaj Parikshit wanted to absorb his mind completely in Krishna, and such absorption can be effected simply by hearing about the uncommon activities of Krishna. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that simply by understanding the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna's appearance, disappearance, and activities, one can immediately return home back to Godhead and never come back to this miserable condition of material existence. It is very auspicious, therefore, to hear always about Krishna. So Maharaj Parikshit requested Shukadeva Goswami to narrate the activities of Krishna so that he could engage his mind in Krishna. The activities of Krishna are non-different from Krishna himself. As long as one is engaged in hearing such transcendental activities of Krishna, they remain aloof from the conditional life of material existence. The topics of Lord Krishna are so auspicious that they purify the speaker, the hearer, and the inquirer. They're compared to the Ganges water which flow from the toe of Lord Krishna. Verse 2. Shutavyadini Rajendra Nirnang Santi Sahashrishah Apashyatam Atmatattvam Gruheshu Gruhametanam. So after glorifying the question, he says, those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. From the purport. In the revealed scriptures, there are 2 nomenclatures for the householder's life. One is grihastha and the other is gruhameti. The grihastha are those who live together with wife and children but live transcendentally for realizing the ultimate truth. The gruhameti, however, are those who live only for the benefit of the family members, extended or centralized, but thus are envious of others. The gruhametis, being interested in family affairs only, are certainly envious or malicious of others. Therefore, one gruhameti is not on good terms with another gruhameti, and in the extended form, one community, society, or nation is not on good terms with another counterpart of selfish interest. In the age of Kali, all the householders are jealous of one another because they are blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth. They have many subject matters for hearing, political, scientific, social, economic, and so on, but due to a poor fund of knowledge, they set aside the question of the ultimate miseries of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. Factually, the human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to birth, death, old age, and disease, but the gruhameti, being illusioned by the material nature, forget everything about self-realization. The ultimate solution to the problems of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, and thus as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 8.16, the miseries of material existence, birth, death, old age, and disease are removed. The process of going back home, back to Godhead is to hear about the Supreme Lord and His name, form, attributes, pastimes, paraphernalia, and variegatedness. Foolish people do not know this. They want to hear something about the name, form, etc. of everything temporary, and they do not know how to utilize this propensity of hearing for the ultimate good. Misguided as they are, they also create some false literatures about the name, form, attributes, etc. of the ultimate truth. So Prabhupada is contrasting here. People who live at home, they're not renunciates, but those who live only for their own senses and the senses of others who are related to them, and those who actually, while maintaining their own bodies and the bodies and minds of those who are dependent on them to fulfill their duties. While doing that, they also have an aim. They also have a spiritual aim. And that's very much, that's so important that they're given a different word. So Shukadeva Goswami continues talking about those who have other questions to ask. He says there's thousands of other questions, right? People can ask any kind of question. Verse 3 says, the lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. The present human civilization is primarily based on the principles of sleeping and sex indulgence at night and earning money in the day and spending the same for family maintenance. Such a form of human civilization is condemned by the Bhagavata school. It's very interesting because the Srimad Bhagavatam, as it makes clear at the very beginning, it's rejecting what's called Kaitava Dharma. It's rejecting Dharma or a sense of duty that's anything other than absolute. Because we can see in many, even great, exalted spiritual texts, the focus is on being an honest materialist. That is to say, like learning to take responsibility for your material desires. That you want to be, I mean, everyone wants to be on some level the owner and controller. So instead of like running riot with that, you make a commitment to somebody and like you build a family with them and you're an honest person and you work nobly and you have like an honest livelihood. And Bhagavatam is not about that. It's about, okay, now that you've done that, now that you're an honest person and there's still something missing, what is it that the soul actually needs, right? So that's what Shukadeva and Parikshit are talking about. That's why this is so high, that Shukadeva is apparently like slandering the honest, law-abiding, truthful, noble, faithful, like moral, upstanding citizen, because he's saying that's not what you're asking about. That's not what's going to satisfy. And that's what Prabhupada is echoing here. He concerns, he says here, he continues, because human life is a combination of matter and spirit soul, the whole process of Vedic knowledge is directed at liberating the spirit soul from the contamination of matter. Knowledge concerning this is called Atma Tattva, the science of the soul, literally. Those men who are too materialistic are unaware of this knowledge and are more inclined to economic development for material enjoyment. The human life is not meant for hard labor for economic development, nor is it meant for sex indulgence like that of the dogs and hogs. It is specially meant for making a solution to the problems of material life and the miseries thereof. So the karmis, those who are dedicated to karma, waste their valuable human life by sleeping in sex indulgence at night and by laboring hard in the daytime to accumulate wealth, and after doing so, they try to improve the standard of materialistic life. Why does this not make any sense? Why is it illogical? Shukadeva Goswami gives us an analogy in verse 4. These are all famous verses. These first few verses are quite well known. They're very commonly quoted by Srila Prabhupada and others in their commentaries. Verse 4, persons devoid of Atma Tattva, devoid of the science of the soul, do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers. Here's the analogy, fallible soldiers, like the body, children, and wife. Wife also here can mean husband. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction, right? Fallible soldier. What's a fallible soldier? You hire a soldier to do something. You trust they're going to do it. What if they fail, right? So Shukadeva Goswami, he's praising his disciple because you are not taking shelter of something that is going to let you down. You're not asking me or anybody, how can I serve my wife and children better? You've done all that. You're asking, what is the best question I can ask now? What is the most important thing at the time of death? And so, therefore, you're not, as the verse says, attached to fallible soldiers. In the purport, this material world is called the world of death. Every living being, beginning from Brahma, whose duration of life is some thousands of millions of years, down to the germs who live for a few seconds only, is struggling for existence. Therefore, this life is a sort of fight with material nature which imposes death upon all. In the human form of life, a living being is competent enough to come to an understanding of this great struggle for existence. But being too attached to family members, society, country, etc. They want to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife or husband, relatives, etc. Although sufficiently experienced in the matter, by dint of past experience and previous examples of their deceased predecessors, they do not see that the so-called fighting soldiers, like the children, relatives, society members, and countrymen, are all fallible in the great struggle. No one will survive in this struggle with material nature. The history of human society definitely proves it. Yet, the foolish people will suggest that in the future they will be able to live perpetually with the help of material science. This poor fund of knowledge exhibited by human society is certainly misleading, and it is all due to ignoring the constitution of the living soul. Right? Like, it's not a bad thing to take care of your body. But what Shukadeva Goswami is condemning is the idea that you should invest all of your energy in finding the perfect diet, the perfect exercise regimen, the perfect multivitamin spectrum, the perfect regimen of going to massages and the sauna and taking your antioxidants and getting the perfect amount of clean water and 7.5 cups a day or whatever they're saying now. Like, it's good to take care of the body, but the idea that this solves all your problems is actually a source of the problem itself, because it's creating a situation where people are not actually investing in the greater question. So Shukadeva Goswami, in praising the question, he's contrasting it with all the other things people are asking with their lives. Like, how can I have more of this? How can I have less of that? How can I have, what's on that channel? What's on this channel? What can I learn about today? What can distract me from my existential condition, right? Last paragraph of this purport. The whole materialistic advancement of human civilization is like the decoration of a dead body. How morbid. Everyone is a dead body flapping only for a few days, and yet all the energy of human life is wasted in the decoration of this dead body. This is a reference to another verse in Shastra where it's described that to inquire only about material things is like to be obsessed about decorating a body that's already died, because it's for show. It's really just for show. No one actually gets any benefit from it, if that's all you ever ask about. Yeah, Prabhupada gives the analogy of a bird in a cage. You may have a beautiful cage, maybe 24 karat gold, maybe gilded. You can polish it all you like. You can encrust it with jewels. You can find the best, biggest, most beautiful pearl from the bottom of the ocean and make that the crown jewel of the cage. But if the bird is stuck in it, it's still going to be suffering because it needs to be free. It doesn't actually care about those things, right? Or a fish. You can't pacify the fish having taken it out of the lake. It doesn't belong there. It's not home. Verse 5. So here's the answer. O descendants of King Bharata, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller and the savior from all miseries. From the purport. If one desires freedom from this vicious circle of material life, in other words, then one must cease to act as a karmi or enjoyer of the results of one's own work, good or bad. One should not do anything either good or bad on their own account, but must execute everything on behalf of the Supreme Lord, the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. Therefore, one should first of all hear about the Lord. When one is perfectly and scrutinizingly heard, one must glorify his acts and deeds, and thus it will become possible to constantly remember the transcendental nature of the Lord. Hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental nature of the Lord, and by so doing, one will always be in the association of the Lord. This brings freedom from all sorts of fears. This process of hearing about and glorifying the Lord is applicable for everyone, whoever they may be, and it will lead one to the ultimate success in everything in which one may be engaged by providence. There are many classes of human beings, the fruitive workers, the empiric philosophers, the mystic yogis, and ultimately the unalloyed devotees. For all of them, one and the same process is applicable for achieving the desired success. Everyone wants to be free from all kinds of fear. Everyone wants the fullest extent of happiness in life. The perfect process for achieving this here and now is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is uttered by such a great authority as Srila Shukadeva Goswami. By hearing about and glorifying the Lord, all a person's activities become molded into spiritual activities. and thus all conceptions of material miseries become completely vanquished. So the idea is that by hearing, as we heard this in the beginning of the first canto, that second chapter, first canto, that by serving devotees, you get a taste for hearing, and by hearing, Shunvatang Swagata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha, the heart becomes cleansed. And when the heart becomes cleansed, that means that Krishna there in the heart, showing some mercy, purifies our heart of the desire to enjoy matter and all the ignorance that goes with it. Gradually, step by step, we become free from the kinds of ideas and thoughts and desires that are binding us, and more purified, become closer and closer to wanting to ask those questions. The hearing purifies us. And then you start to speak, right? Then you start to give a class, or like maybe you're not on a Vyasa and giving some fancy schmancy class. You're just talking to your friends. And they're like, what'd you read today? Oh, I read this really cool thing in the Canto 2, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, and he's talking about how, Prabhupada says this analogy, the bird in the cage, and you're just like repeating it. And it's just, it may not be like original, but that's fine. That's the point. The point is it's not like, in empirical circles, you have to create something new, publish or perish. But in spiritual circles, just by representing what's actually already existing, what's already true, you get purified. Shukadev's not making anything up here. He's just hearing what he heard, speaking what he heard from his father, Vyasadeva. So he's representing. And it's so beautiful that it's actually like attracted all these sages and demigods. And we're all here just like, oh, wow, Canto 2, Shukadev's going to speak. So then you're speaking with your friends. After hearing, it's coming out of your mouth. Now it's kirtan. And what happens when you hear and then you speak is that your remembrance changes. Your remembrance actually becomes molded. And that's the whole point. The heart is a little rememberer. We're little units of consciousness. And like, if we get to the point where outside of our direct activity of hearing and chanting, we're still remembering, like the kirtan is going on, we're still feeling the presence of Krishna, we're remembering that pastime, we're remembering that deity, we're just feeling remembrance, right? Reconnection. And we're doing it right. That's the whole point, is to come to that. And if we're not there yet, it just means more hearing and chanting. We'll get you there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's a simple process, and it's nothing new. This is effectively the same thing that we heard about in the first canto, but we're hearing it from Shukadeva's mouth. And it's in a beautiful context of Parikshit saying, I don't want anything else. I'm ready to die. Give me the highest benefit here. Let me know what the actual highest purpose I can have is. And Shukadeva's saying, yeah, your instincts were right. It really is to hear, chant, and remember. Verse 6. The highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. And end of this verse, the last line is Ante Narayana Smriti. Ante. What does Ante sound like? No? End. Ante means end. That's where the word ending. Ante means the end. The whole point he's saying, the whole point is at the end. Ante Narayana Smriti. Smriti means remembrance. Smarana or Smriti means remembrance. Let there be remembrance at the time of death. This is what he's affirming to his student. The whole point of all this hearing and chanting is to come to the point of remembering at the time of death, which is quite salient for Parikshit because he knows when he's going to die. It's actually a great blessing in a way because he's got complete assurance. There's no there's no assurance for most people like what exactly when we're going to die. He just knows I'm going to die in exactly 7 days. So he's got a clear goal now. He's got a finish line. Whatever he's going to do, he's got to do it by then. And so he's established what he has to do, hear and chant. And he's established what crossing the finish line means for him. It doesn't just mean dying. Because he's smart enough to know, wise enough to know, everyone's going to die. I'm going to die. I was going to die anyway. This isn't news. The news is that I'm going to die now. But it's not news that I was going to die. So the finish line for him is to remember at the end of life. So now he's like, okay, that's it. And as soon as you have a clear goal, then everything, like all of your faculties, even material nature, Krishna, they start to act. Like as soon as you know where you want to go, you have a clear goal, then all the grace comes down. It's like, let me just get that done. Ever like pulled an all-nighter for a test? Ever just like had like an intense prayer? It's like, no matter what, let me just please, let me get that negative diagnosis. Let me just please find out I'm cancer negative, or please let that be okay after that car accident, or what. Like you just become totally focused. All of your faculties, everything becomes hyper. This is prediction. It's like, okay, let me get to the point where I can just remember Krishna and cross the finish line like that. From the purport. There are many historical instances of the achievement of spiritual perfection, such as that of the Sanakadi Rishis or the 9 celebrated Yogendras, who attained perfection only after being situated in the devotional service of the Lord. None of the devotees of the Lord ever deviated from the path of devotional service by taking to other methods as adopted by the Gyanis or Yogis. Everyone is anxious to achieve the highest perfection of their particular activity, and it is indicated herein that such perfection is Narayana Smriti, remembrance of the Lord, for which everyone must endeavor their best. In other words, life should be molded in such a manner that one is able to progressively remember the personality of Godhead in every step of life, right? Progressively. We may not have that sense of intense urgency Parikshit has. Generally, there'll be times in our life when we do, but it's difficult to stay there, and it can be a little unnatural. It can create a sense of artificial anxiety to always be like, oh, we're all going to die anyway. Just hear and chant. But if you can progressively come to the point of gradually remembering more and more and more, then you're on the right path. Verse 7. O King Parikshit, mainly the topmost transcendentalists who are above the regulative principles and restrictions take pleasure in describing the glories of the Lord. Right? Even those who have nothing to do with matter, they take no pleasure in matter. They're transcendental to it. They have no interest in it. They find joy in hearing and chanting about the Lord. It's actually a transcendental subject matter. Shukadev himself is an example of this. We spoke about it briefly in the first canto. He was himself Brahman realized, but he became attracted to Krishna by hearing the sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam. That attracted him, although he had no attraction to matter. It's proof that the Bhagavatam itself is not material, and it's even higher than the joy of impersonal oneness found in Brahman realization. Verse 8. At the end of the Dvapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature called Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Sri Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. So he's speaking here about himself, just like Narada did in the first canto. He's giving a bit of an example. Shukadeva Goswami, as Prabhupada points out in the purport, Shukadeva Goswami, being a recognized liberated soul and the topmost transcendentalist, was accepted by all of the topmost sages present in the meeting during the last 7 days of Maharaj Parikshit. He cites from the example of his life that he himself was attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord, and he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Sri Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavatam, or for that matter, any other scientific literature, cannot be studied at home by one's own intellectual capacity. Medical books of anatomy or physiology are available in the market, but no one can become a qualified medical practitioner simply by reading such books at home. Very interesting, right? And it's true. You can buy those. In fact, a lot of colleges, universities, you can just attend the classes for free. You know that, right? You can just walk onto the campus and walk into a class. They have no problem with that. You're not paying for the class. You're paying for them to actually interact with you. It's the knowledge. Like you can go online and just like see all the class notes for free. You can buy the books. You actually have to have the personal touch. Someone has to authorize you that you've understood this. That's what makes you a graduate, right? Same principle. Similarly, or rather, next sentence, one has to be admitted to the medical college and study the books under the guidance of learned professors. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam, the postgraduate study of the science of Godhead, and that's in italics for emphasis, can only be learned by studying it at the feet of a realized soul, like Srila Vyasadeva. Although Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very day of his birth, he still had to take lessons of Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Vyasadeva, who compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of another great soul, Sri Narada Muni. We all know about this because we all heard about it. Narada instructs Vyasa, Vyasa speaks Bhagavatam, Shukadev hears it from Vyasa, and even though he's already Brahman realized, he becomes even more advanced in transcendental science. Okay. Verse 9. O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses, right? What's becoming like a classic method, speaking about yourself, like personal revelations. Like, I also benefited from this. From the purport, with a poor fund of knowledge, we cannot adjust to the idea of the personality of the absolute truth. And therefore the personal activities of the Lord are deplored by the less intelligent impersonalists. But reasons and arguments, together with the transcendental process of approaching the absolute truth, help even the staunch impersonalists to become attracted by the personal activities of the Lord. A person like Shukadev Goswami cannot be attracted by any mundane activity, but when such a devotee is convinced by a superior method, they are certainly attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord. The Lord is transcendental, as are his activities. He is neither inactive nor impersonal. Verse 10, that very Srimad Bhagavatam I shall recite before you, because you are the most sincere devotee of Lord Krishna. One who gives full attention and respect to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam achieves unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, the giver of salvation. So that's the culture. Whoever becomes fortunate has a responsibility to pay it forward. You contrast that with the empirical context of like, okay, yeah, I may have taken some things from the previous scientists, but I've created something new and amazing, and my theories are better than the previous ones, and so you should all buy my book, and I'm the best, and I want to be the master and recognized for it. You know, perfection in bhakti is to be a servant. Perfection in bhakti is to be recognized as being qualified to even share this transcendental science with anyone else. We don't want to be anyone's master. The whole point is Krishna's the master. Let me please just always remember that and help others to do it. So Shukadev is saying, he's making a promise here. I will now recite that before you. Whatever I heard from my spiritual master, whatever good I've received, whatever benefit I've gotten, I will give it to you right now. That's a real teacher, right? There's no like, okay, sign the dotted line, here, give me some money first. No. There's none of that. The knowledge is free. You want to give some donation or whatever, that's between you and your guru, but like the knowledge is free. And he's dedicated to give. They're going to give it anyway. In fact, Shukadev Goswami devotees like that, they live for this, right? It's like they would just give and give and give. And the greatest happiness they have is finding the perfect recipient for that. Oh, you want to hear? Okay, here we go. From the purport, the spiritual master must be satisfied with the disciple. Only then is knowledge automatically manifest before the student of spiritual science. The bona fide spiritual master reasonably explains everything to the disciple on the authorities of Vedic wisdom. The disciple can receive such teachings not exactly intellectually, but by submissive inquiries and a service attitude. The idea is that both the spiritual master and the disciple must be bona fide. In this case, the spiritual master, Shukadev Goswami, is ready to recite exactly what he has learned from his great father, Srila Vyasadeva. And the disciple, Maharaj Parikshit, is a great devotee of Lord Krishna. This unflinching faith in Lord Krishna prepares one to become a student of Srimad Bhagavatam, and one who hears Srimad Bhagavatam from a devotee like Shukadev Goswami is sure to attain salvation at the end, as Maharaj Parikshit did. The professional reciter of Srimad Bhagavatam and the pseudo-devotees whose faith is based on 1 week's hearing are different from Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. Srila Vyasadeva explained Srimad Bhagavatam unto Shukadev Goswami from the very beginning, and so Shukadev Goswami also explained it to the king. And then Prabhupada talks about how Lord Krishna is described as the Mahapurusha in the Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11 and his devotional feature as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord Krishna himself in his devotional attitude, descended to the earth to bestow special favors upon the fallen souls of this age of Kali. And then he quotes two extremely beautiful verses from the Bhagavatam, 11.5.33 and 11.5.34. If you want to refer to those, you can. They're really beautiful and famous verses that, and the one before that, 32, 33, and 34, in Canto 11, Chapter 5. They are about Lord Chaitanya predicting his appearance and his purpose to help everyone to come closer to be able to hear Bhagavatam, right? Anyone who hears Srimad Bhagavatam attentively from its bona fide reciter is sure to become a sincere devotee of the Lord who is able to award liberation. There was none so attentive as Maharaj Parikshit in the matter of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and there was none so qualified as Shukadeva Goswami to recite the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, anyone who follows in the footsteps of either the ideal reciter or the ideal hearer, Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit respectively, will undoubtedly attain salvation like them. Maharaj Parikshit attained salvation by hearing only, and Shukadeva Goswami attained salvation only by reciting. Recitation and hearing are two processes out of 9 devotional activities. And by strenuously following the principles either in all or in parts, one can attain the absolute plane. So the complete text of Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning with the Janmadhyasya verse up to the last one in the 12th canto, was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami for the attainment of salvation by Maharaj Parikshit. In the Padma Purana, it is mentioned that Gautama Muni advised Maharaj Ambarisha to regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam as it was recited by Shukadeva Goswami, and herein it is confirmed that Maharaj Ambarisha heard Srimad Bhagavatam from the very beginning to the end, as it was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami. One who is actually interested in the Bhagavatam therefore must not play with it by reading or hearing a portion from here and a portion from there. One must follow in the footsteps of great kings like Maharaj Ambarisha, Maharaj Parikshit, and hear it from a bona fide representative of Shukadeva Goswami. You're all doing that. Prabhupada actually said that when he came to North America, because he didn't know how much time he would have, he didn't know how much of an audience he would have, how many opportunities he would have, he put everything, he put what he considered to be the total spiritual science in the first and second cantos purports, so that if people just read those, and he didn't have time, if he just left his body before he was finished or anything, that they could just get perfection from that. And Srila Prabhupada's commentaries are actually incredible. They're magical. They weave together the conclusions of all 12 cantos of Bhagavatam, the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the writings of the 6 Goswamis, including Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, the 6 Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami, and books that you and I have never even heard of. They weave all that together so that we can get the final conclusions and be completely supported in that. And even if you don't end up reading all those exact books yourself in your life, although you should try, and on Tuesday nights, that's our goal here, I'm not going to stop, Krishna willing, is even though we only have a certain amount of capacity, just by reading from these books systematically and regularly, Nityam Bhagavata Seva means at least daily, you should hear something, read something daily, then you get that special mercy of Srila Prabhupada and these devotees in this line where it's like, this is what they're all about. This is what we're all about. Are we going to try to read the whole chapter? Well, let's see how many verses there are. There's 22 verses.
No, it's 30. I'm saying 722.
Yeah, well,
There's
maybe
30
not. We'll see.
39 verses.
We have 12 classes and 10 chapters to read. So if you don't read a full chapter, it's okay. But I'll try. Verse 10, that very Srimad Bhagavatam I shall recite before you because you're the most sincere devotee of Lord Krishna. One who gives full attention and respect to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam achieves unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, the giver of salvation. I think we read that, yeah. So in verse 11.
Double down on that one.
Yeah, no loss. O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge, right? So whether you have all material desires, no material desires, which means like you're liberated, or you're already a great devotee, like you're a devotee yourself. It's the same process, right? No matter where you are in the process, it's the same activity.
Mm.
From the purport, there are different types of persons who desire to attain successes in different varieties of pursuits. Generally, the persons are materialists who desire to enjoy the fullest extent of material gratification. Next to them are the transcendentalists who have attained perfect knowledge about the nature of material enjoyment, and thus are aloof from such an illusory way of life. More or less, they are satisfied in themselves by self-realization. Above them are the devotees of the Lord, who neither aspire to enjoy the material world, nor desire to get out of it. They are after the satisfaction of the Lord Sri Krishna. This process is recommended not only for the progressive students in different departments of ideological success, but also for those who are already successful in their achievement as fruitive workers, as philosophers, or as devotees of the Lord. And the purport continues with a discussion of the 10 offenses in the chanting of Hare Krishna, the Lord's name. I strongly recommend everyone who's chanting. First of all, I strongly recommend everyone to chant. It's the most, along with hearing, it's the most practical and simple and efficacious way of making spiritual advancement. And if you are, then you can read this purport and hear about what the 10 offenses are in the chanting, which the point is to avoid them. And the root cause of all offenses, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out, is inattention. Chanting inattentively creates any of the other offenses. The idea of avoiding them is that it protects you, so you can actually chant on the pure platform, free from offenses. That chanting on the platform free from offenses is actually what allows the descent of pure love for Krishna in the heart. Verse 12, what is the value of a prolonged life which is wasted, inexperienced by years in this world? Better a moment of full consciousness, because that gives one a start in searching after the supreme interest. So he's actually kind of like reassuring Maharaj Parikshit, who only had 7 days left to live, that, as Prabhupada points out, better to live for a moment with full consciousness of the supreme interest to be fulfilled. Those who are bewildered by the external features of this material world and are engaged in the animal propensities of the eat, drink, and be merry type of life are simply wasting their lives by the unseen passing of valuable years, right? I think it was Socrates who said the unexamined life is not worth living. It's the same principle. We should know in perfect consciousness that a human life is bestowed upon the conditioned soul to achieve spiritual success. And the easiest possible procedure to attain this end is to chant the holy name of the Lord. Verse 13. The saintly king Khatvanga, after being informed that the duration of his life would be only a moment more, at once freed himself from all material activities and took shelter of the supreme safety, the personality of Godhead. So Maharaj Parikshit had 7 days, and Shukadeva is reassuring him that there is a historical person called Khatvanga. He's mentioned in other Puranas, I think, that Prabhupada talks about it in the purport. Maharaj Khatvanga was invited by the demigods and the higher planets to fight demons, and as a king he fought the battles to the full satisfaction of the demigods. The demigods, being fully satisfied with him, wanted to give him some benediction for material enjoyment, but Maharaj Khatvanga, being very much alert to his prime duty, inquired from the demigods about his remaining duration of life. Demigods means they're in charge of the aspects of material nature, so one or the other of them, like Yamaraj, would know how much he's destined to live. He was informed by the demigods, however, that his life would last only a moment longer. The king at once left the heavenly kingdom, which is always full of material enjoyment of the highest standard, and coming down to this earth took ultimate shelter of the all-safe personality of Godhead. He was successful in his great attempt and achieved liberation. This attempt, even for a moment by the saintly king, was successful because he was always alert to his prime duty. Maharaj Parikshit was thus encouraged by the great Shukadeva Goswami, even though he had only 7 days left in his life, to execute the prime duty of hearing the glories of the Lord in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. Verse 14. Maharaj Parikshit, now your duration of life is limited to 7 more days. So during this time you can perform all those rituals which are needed for the best purpose of your next life. 15. At the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death, but one must cut off all attachment to the material body and everything pertaining to it, and all desires thereof. From the purport, the foolishness of gross materialism is that people think of making a permanent settlement in this world, although it is a settled fact that one has to give up everything that has been created by valuable human energy. In the second chapter of this canto, this matter will be broadly discussed, but as far as the change of body is concerned, one must prepare now for the next life. Foolish people attach more importance to the present temporary life, and thus the foolish leaders make appeals to the body and the bodily relations. After death, one forgets everything about the present bodily relations. We have a little experience of this at night when we go to sleep. While sleeping, we forget everything about this body and bodily relations, although this forgetfulness is a temporary situation for only a few hours. Death is nothing but sleeping for a few months in order to develop another term of bodily engagement, which we are awarded by the law of nature according to our aspiration. Therefore, one only has to change the aspiration during the course of this present life, and for this there is need of training in the current duration of life. This training can be begun at any stage of life, or even a few seconds before death, but the usual procedure is for one to get the training from very early life. In the last part of the purport, a living being is meant for service activities, and his desires are centered around such a service attitude. Beginning from the top executive head of the state down to the insignificant pauper in the street, all are rendering some sort of service to others. The perfection of such a service attitude is only attained simply by transferring the desire of service from matter to spirit, or from Satan to God. Interesting Christian terminology here from Prabhupada. So Shukadeva is talking about becoming detached from matter as a preamble to becoming attached to Krishna. Verse 16, one should leave home and practice self-control. In a sacred place, they should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place duly sanctified. Verse 17. After sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember the three transcendental letters. Aum, A-U-M. Om is actually considered to be three letters. A-U-M. Jiva Goswami, he indicates in his Sandarbhas, this refers to the Lord, his internal energy, the masculine, the feminine, and the living entity. Krishna, goddess, and us. Aum. That's the Omkar. So Shukadeva is talking about this process of remembering the Omkar, and by regulating the breathing process, control the mind so as to not forget the transcendental seed. This Omkar is considered what's called Bijam, the seed. It's a transcendental seed sound vibration. In the purport, this Omkar is a note of address, such as, quote, "Oh my Lord," just as Om Hari Om means, "Oh my Lord," the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As we have explained before, the Lord's holy name is identical with the Lord himself. So also is Omkara. But persons who are unable to realize the transcendental personal form or name of the Lord on account of their imperfect senses, in other words, the neophytes, are trained to the practice of self-realization by this mechanical process of regulating the breathing function and simultaneously repeating the pranava, Omkara, within the mind. The devotees directly fix their minds on the person of the Absolute Truth, but one who is unable to accommodate such personal features of the Absolute is disciplined in impersonality to train the mind to make further progress. Verse 18, gradually as the mind becomes progressively spiritualized, withdraw it from sense activities, and by intelligence the senses will be controlled. The mind too absorbed in material activities can be engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead and become fixed in full transcendental consciousness. Verse 19. Thereafter you should meditate upon the limbs of Vishnu, the Lord's form, the limbs of Vishnu, one after another, without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. Thus the mind becomes free from all sense objects. There should be no other thing to be thought upon. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is the ultimate truth, the mind becomes completely reconciled in him only. So this kind of gradual process was taken in other ages. We don't generally in this age. We fast track by the virtue of the holy name. The process of chanting is much more accelerated. Verse 20, one's mind is always agitated by the passionate mode of material nature and bewildered by the ignorant mode of nature. But one can rectify such conceptions by the relation of Vishnu and thus become pacified by cleansing the dirty things created by them. 21. O king, by this system of remembrance and by being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good personal conception of the Lord, one can very soon attain devotional service to the Lord under his direct shelter. From the purport, pantheism, or the system of feeling the presence of the Almighty everywhere, is a sort of training of the mind to become accustomed to the devotional conception. And it is this devotional attitude of the mystic that makes possible the successful termination of such mystic attempts. One is not, however, elevated to such a successful status without the tinge of mixture in devotional service. The devotional atmosphere created by pantheistic vision develops into devotional service in later days, and that is the only benefit for the impersonalist. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 12.5 that the impersonal way of self-realization is more troublesome because it reaches the goal in an indirect way, although the impersonalist also becomes obsessed with the personal features of the Lord after a long time. That's the reason for this kind of practice. It's more gradual. One can make progress, even if they're not qualified to take to personal practice right away. They may take this impersonal practice. But as Prabhupada's purports and the verses make clear, it's not so relevant for us now because the mercy of Lord Chaitanya is directly giving access to the personal path without qualification, frankly. None of us generally who come to Krishna consciousness are accomplished yogis, who've performed austerities and chanted Omkar and have all the fruits of that. We just receive the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. That's our qualification. But nevertheless, the gradual path is given here. Verse 22, the fortunate king Parikshit, inquiring further, said, O Brahmana, please describe in full detail. And we asked another question. Please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied and how the conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed. How practical. If you ever felt there was any nonsense in your mind, this is a very practical question for you. 23. Shukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayama, breath control, and thus control the mind and senses, and with intelligence apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord called the Virat Rupa. 24. This gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is the personal body of the Absolute Truth, wherein the universal resultant past, present, and future of material time is experienced, right? So there's a relationship between the material world and the spiritual source, that it's one of his energies. That's what Shukadeva Goswami is saying here. And he's talking about the practice of seeing transcendence in one's own material context, in the gigantic body of the universe. From the purport, this Virat Rupa, or universal form of the Lord, was especially manifested not for the benefit of Arjuna in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, but for that unintelligent class of men who accept anyone and everyone as an incarnation of the Lord and so mislead the general mass of people. For them, the indication is that one should ask the cheap incarnation to exhibit his Virat Rupa. The Virat Rupa manifestation of the Lord is simultaneously a challenge to the atheist and a favor for the asuras who could think of the Lord as Virat and thus gradually cleanse the dirty things from their hearts in order to become qualified to actually see the transcendental form of the Lord in the near future. This is a favor of the all-merciful Lord to the atheists and the gross materialists, that they can meditate on the universe as an extension of Krishna's form. Because in a sense it is. It's although material. And so we see that yogis from time immemorial have retreated into mountainsides and lakes and what have you, because it's more easy to see there the connection with the natural world to some source. They may or may not be great devotees. Even if they're not, that impersonal meditation is considered to be a step on the path. That's what Shukadeva Goswami is talking about. Verse 25, the gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead within the body of the universal shell, which is covered by sevenfold material elements, is the subject for the Virat conception. Persons who have realized it, have studied that the planets known as Patala constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes of the Rasatala planets. The ankles of the Mahatala planets and his shanks constitute the Talatala planets. So you have higher and lower planetary systems, and they're compared to parts of his transcendental body. The knees of the universal form are the planetary system of the name Sutala, and the two thighs are the Vitala and Attala planetary systems. The hips are Mahitala, and outer space is the depression of his navel. The chest of the original personality of the gigantic form is the luminary planetary system. His neck is the Mahar planets. His mouth is the Janas planets. And his forehead is the Tapas planetary system. The topmost planetary system, known as Satyaloka, is the head of he who has 1,000 heads. His arms are the demigods, headed by Indra. The 10 directional sides are his ears, and physical sound is his sense of hearing. His nostrils are the two Ashwini Kumaras, those are demigods. And material fragrance is his sense of smell. His mouth is the blazing fire. This is meditation on the universal form, the cosmos as a manifestation of Krishna. The sphere of outer space constitutes his eye pits, and the eyeball is the sun as the power of seeing. His eyelids are both the day and night, and in the movements of his eyebrows, Brahma and similar supreme personalities reside. His palate is the director of water, Varuna, and the juice or essence of everything is his tongue. They say that the Vedic hymns are the cerebral passage of the Lord, and his jaws of teeth are Yama, god of death, who punishes the sinners. The art of affection is his set of teeth, and the most alluring material energy is his smile. This great ocean of material creation is but the casting of his glance over us. From the purport, according to Vedic assertion, this material creation is the result of the Lord's casting a glance over the material energy, which is described herein as the most alluring, illusory energy. The conditioned souls who are allured by such materialism should know that the material temporary creation is simply an imitation of the reality, and that those who are captivated by such alluring glances of the Lord are put under the direction of the controller of sinners called Yamaraj. The Lord smiles affectionately, displaying his teeth. The intelligent person who can grasp these truths about the Lord becomes a soul fully surrendered unto him. 32. Modesty is the upper portion of his lips. Hankering is his chin. Religion is the breast of the Lord, and irreligion is his back. Brahmaji, who generates all living beings in the material world, is his genitals, and the Mitra Varunas are his two testicles. The ocean is his waist, and the hills and mountains are the stacks of his bones.
What are the Mitra Varunas?
They're demigods. O king, the rivers are the veins of the gigantic body. The trees are the hairs of his body. And the omnipotent air is his breath. The passing ages are his movements, and his activities are the reactions of the three modes of material nature. O best amongst the Kurus, the clouds which carry water are the hairs on his head. The terminations of days or nights are his dress, and the supreme cause of material creation is his intelligence. His mind is the moon, the reservoir of all changes. How many verses are there?
39.
35. The principle of matter, Mahatattva, is the consciousness of the omnipresent Lord, as asserted by the experts, and Rudra Deva is his ego. The horse, mule, camel, and elephant are his nails, and wild animals and quadrupeds are situated in the belt zone of the Lord. Varieties of birds are indications of his masterful artistic sense. The birds are evidence of Krishna's artistic sense. Manu, the father of mankind, is the emblem of his standard intelligence, and humanity is his residence. The celestial species of human beings, like the Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Chananas, and angels, all represent his musical rhythm, and the demoniac soldiers are representations of his wonderful prowess. So there are varieties of subhuman and suprahuman living entities. Gandharvas are like famous for their singing. The Apsaras are famously beautiful angelic deities. They're like deities. They're not exactly divine, but they're, from our point of view, they're like angels. They're described in passing here and in more detail in other places. They're also part of the material manifestation. The Virat Purusha's face is the Brahmanas. His arms are the Kshatriyas. His thighs are the Vaishyas, and the Shudras are under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable demigods are also overtaken by him, and it is the duty of everyone to perform sacrifices with feasible goods to appease the Lord. So Prabhupada talks about how all the aspects of the Varnashram system are just parts of the body of Krishna, and he says here, thus by the cooperation of all classes of human beings, the sacrifice recommended in this age, namely, the sacrifice of congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, may be executed for the common welfare of all the people of the world. Verse 38. I have thus explained to you the gross, material, gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation, concentrates their mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in the material world. And finally, verse 39. One should concentrate their mind upon the supreme personality of Godhead, who alone distributes himself in so many manifestations, just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate their mind on him, the only all-blissful absolute truth. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause their own degradation. Om Tat Sat. End of chapter 1. Jai. All right, let's take any comments, questions, reflections. What did you hear?
I love these descriptions of ways that we can see Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in not only in the demigods and Kshatriyas, all these ways, but also in nature, like a
Clouds and forests and
space, and that the hairs on his body, like I'm thinking on his arms and stuff, are trees.
And his artistic sense is the birds.
Right, that can change, like being able to recall that while you're out looking at a tree or hearing a bird, or looking up at the sky or following the astronauts who just went around the moon, like that we're just in space, right? It's like to be able to, that's so helpful to be able to exist in this world and realize we're not of it, and just to see Krishna
right
all around us.
Thank you. Jai, any more reflections?
You just read in the purport, text 37, the common welfare of all people by congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Just struck me.
Yeah, there's that word again, welfare. Yeah, that's the sacrifice recommended for this age. It's been made very simple. Chanting. We're getting together. We're doing that. And we're trying to encourage others to take to it. That's actually a yajna. It's a sacrifice. It's the yajna that Lord Chaitanya came to propagate. There's no complicated paraphernalia. There's no like fire sacrifices with ghee and complicated deity worship. Those things are there in secondary supplementary form. But the main thing we're doing is chanting Hare Krishna, chanting Krishna's names, God's names. And anyone could do it in their tradition. Chant the names of the Lord as you understand them. It's totally bona fide. Just do it. Don't make any excuses. Don't sit around. Just do it as much as possible. And it's very, very easy and efficacious. Thank you. Yeah. Any other reflections?
I was thinking that I have the parallel between chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita and here.
Right. Universal form.
So strong, and here that's what confused me when I was a little thinking about that universal form. Arjuna's like, I can't deal with this, and I sort of can't either. I'm a lot easier for me to see the deity as a two-armed form that is even more rare than the universal form to think about that rather than all this other stuff. Although I do, I often, my favorite verse in the Bhagavad Gita are 7:8 through 7:11. I'm the taste of water, the radiance of the sun and the moon. So you see that as being, the ability of the birds to chirp and all that singing is part of Krishna. So there's so many parallels here. But I was struck by in the purport it says just keep on thinking of this gigantic form, and I'm like, I don't know if I can, but I can think of the parts of that form. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's a relative injunction because Shukadeva Goswami is giving that gradual path of elevation for those who are not ready for the personal yet. But it began with the final conclusion. Hear about chant and remember Krishna. And now he's giving the gradual path. But yeah, we see Arjuna come to the same conclusion you came to, which is like, okay, at the end of the day, like I can only take so much of this universal form because it's bewildering and infinitely complicated, kind of terrifying. but Krishna's what's called Saumya Rupa, his sweet personal form, he manifests again on Arjuna's request. And that's what the devotees want, because at the end of the day, we're made for that. We're made for that sweetness. No matter how much we may think that like the mysteries of the unknown universe and the depths of what science can capture or what the human mind can comprehend about Krishna's material manifestation. Oh yeah, that's so interesting. It'll satisfy me. He's like, yeah, to a degree, but not as much as Krishna will in his personal feature. That's the great secret. So if you're already attracted to Krishna, you're actually like a step ahead of what this section of the chapter is talking about. And yeah, thank you.
One thing that I was thinking about when you were reading it, especially in the beginning of the chapter, was the concept of wasting time.
Yeah,
He's talking about,
big time.
sleep and sex indulgence. Yes, we all need to sleep, but think about in our modern society, how much time do we waste on this, on TV, on brain rot, watching the news, whatever it is that we get addicted to. And like, I don't know, I'm sure that's the same for all of you. You can start on it and then realize 2 hours later, oh, wow, where did that time go?
Mm-hmm.
So to really be conscious of choosing and using more discernment with what we spend our time doing.
Yeah,
So very important.
very practical, very, very practical. And Shukadev Goswami talks about how, because he knows Parikshit's going to die in 7 days, but he says, what is the value of a long life that's wasted? Better a single moment of pure consciousness. So he's stressing quality over quantity, because even a single moment, the effect it has on the soul is completely indelible and can change the trajectory completely from tragic to glorious. And by contrast, like it doesn't matter how long you live, if you're just running at the clock in touch with the material modes of nature, it doesn't really amount to much. And it's just like passing the time until the next actual opportunity to make some advancement spiritually. I also really appreciate that sense of urgency that Shukadeva Goswami is imparting onto Maharaj Parikshit. And in other words, I found it very encouraging, because Parikshit may feel like, I only have 7 days, but Maharaj Parikshit was like, Shukadeva was like, well, you know what, Katvanga only had a second. So you're fine. You're good. You're asking the right questions. You're asking the best questions. In fact, I'm grateful you're asking me these questions, because other people have all these other things to talk about. And it's such a waste. Yeah. And for those of us who are not as, as motivated as Maharaj Parikshit, we can make progress by gradually practicing asking the right questions and practicing putting ourselves in front of transcendental sound vibration. Prabhupada paraphrased the Bible when he said, God helps those who help themselves, and helping yourself means putting yourself in front of transcendental sound vibration. Because that's what's really going to pull you out of the hamster wheel of the material energy. Is like, oh, wait a minute, but there's also this Krishna fellow, and that's kind of cool. And like, you hear about that, and it just short circuits the whole thing. Just a little bit, even just a little bit. Then go back to your doom scrolling. It's okay. You can have that. But get a little bit of this transcendental, just Tuesday nights, just a little bit every day. And next thing you know, you're like, you know what? I'm okay with less of that and more of this. That's how it happens. You don't have to be like a great saint king like Maharaj Parikshit to begin with. It's not necessary. Not in Lord Chaitanya's movement. Jai.
Right, like you said, when you hear and speak, your remembrance is like activated
Yeah.
and enhanced.
Hearing to speaking to remembrance.
Yeah.
That's the path. Okay.
I just add that I saw that this process, and it talks a little bit about the, make sure, not make sure, but as take it seriously as you're progressing in life. I'm progressing in life, and so taking it more seriously about coming to a realization that this is not going to be, the material world is not going to be giving me satisfaction. That having more is not necessarily what I need in my life. I need more spirituality, but I don't need more material things. And there was a story story that I think they did on Wisdom of the Sages of, you know, a couple that was extremely, and you might know their names, that really great devotees who were in a very near a terrible car accident in London, and the wife was taken away in an ambulance, and she's the ambulance drivers, excuse me, the doctors who were working on her, you know, they put an oxygen mask on her and everything else, and all of a sudden she looked at them and she grabbed the mask, took it off, and said, "I'm sorry, I'm about to leave my body," and she started chanting, and she did,
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
and really knew that that's what she needed to do at the moment of death. And
That's hardcore.
yeah,
I
it
like
is.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow,
So
what a hero.
I think of that, you know, okay, it's coming closer. Let me keep on remembering to chant. And by repeating, repeatedly chanting, and, you know, I seem to chant all the time. I wake up chanting, right? And maybe that way, when it's my time, I'll remember to chant.
That's
So.
the process. You're doing it. Jai, thanks for that. All right. So, um, in the WhatsApp group, please share your realizations, reflections from this first chapter. Very powerful chapter. Discussion of the varieties of topics people can discuss. The fallible soldiers, taking shelter of your own body as if it's going to save you, the bodies of families, of other material constructs, and time wasted in other topics, and the quality of Krishna conscious questions and answers. And then the beginning of the description of the universal form. Anything in there that you find interesting, you want to reflect on, we'd love to hear about it. Thanks to our YouTube crew. Thanks to Shukadev Goswami Maharaj Parikshit for this canto, and Srila Prabhupada for giving it to us. Thanks to all of you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right.
Shami Praski.
Haribol. See you all next week. Actually, see you sooner on WhatsApp.